Everybody, welcome in. Gonna give folks just a minute to get into the webinar, and then we will get started. Thanks for being here with us today. I always say we'll give us a minute and I get really excited. So let's go ahead, let's jump in as folks continue to join. Hey, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. We're really pleased to have everyone here with us again as we continue our educational material reviews for the Recycling Modernization Act. If you are new to these webinars, we do have a few recordings of our introductory webinars, which we held last year, as well as the recording for our Batch 1A Educational Materials Review webinar, which was held last month. So if you want a deep dive on how we got here so far, the recordings are available to watch at your leisure. And Ari will drop a link into the chat for you now, so feel free to bookmark that page and check out the recordings for anything that you may have missed. We will cover some of the background from those presentations today, such as upcoming actions and project timing, but in briefer form. The purpose of this webinar today is to serve local governments, service providers, and community-based organizations with information about education and outreach efforts. And today we'll be introducing our next set of educational materials and a feedback survey. So if you're not a local government, service provider, or community-based organization, this webinar may not be as helpful for you. So just wanted to let folks up front know that before we get underway. And today we're going to start with introductions, review the education and outreach engagement process, and then dig into educational materials, including a review of the feedback received on Batch 1A and revisions made, and a review of Batch 1B, which will be our focus today. And we'll provide details about the feedback survey that will be open to you following the conclusion of this webinar. Before I hand it over to Alex Bertolucci with Circular Action Alliance, I wanted to go over some logistics for today, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with by now. But the chat is open as we're going to be asking attendees to let us know who's with us today. However, if you do have a question, we please ask that you use the Q&A function, as that will allow us to address some questions as we go along. We have many subject matter experts here today to help with that. So any questions, comments, please use the Q&A. That is in a different section than the chat. So we have a lot of team members on the call today, and I'll first hand it over to Alex with Circular Action Alliance to begin our introductions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Bertolucci. I'm the communications manager for Circular Action Alliance here in Oregon. And this is our ever-growing team. We show this just about every time, and there seems to be a new face on there every time. So Matt Francis is our newest team member. He's working on the materials management side of things and going to be leading that. We actually have another new person starting tomorrow, Crystal Moore, who's going to be working with the Piero Depot team. So there's lots of new faces, lots of great experience that's coming on board. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out to these folks and you can get your questions answered from them. And as many of you hopefully saw, some exciting news. Just last Friday, CAA's Oregon program plan was approved by Oregon DEQ. So this was the first extended producer responsibility program plan for packaging that's been approved in the United States, which is a massive milestone for not just CAA, the Recycling Partnership played a huge role. DEQ obviously has been instrumental, all of you out there who have helped provide information and feedback, So this is very exciting news and kind of moves us from working on that program plan to the full scale implementation of that plan moving forward. So thanks to all of you, and hopefully you can take a minute if you haven't this weekend to celebrate this a little bit, because it's a big milestone here for Oregon and the whole country.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alex. And I did bring that slide on him last minute because he just received the news on Friday, but we knew that we were talking with all of you today, so we wanted to share that great news. And for anyone that is not familiar with the Recycling Partnership, we pride ourselves on being a team of experts, practitioners, and thought leaders with real-world experience who are delivering on our mission of building a better recycling system. And we have a nice crew with us again today to help us run the show and answer questions that you'll be interacting with. So I'll hand it over to Emily to introduce herself first.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Krieger, and I work for the Recycling Partnership, and I'm handling the project management for the E&O development work. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Lee, who's joining us for the first time in the webinars today.
Thank you, Emily, and hello, everybody. It's great to be here with everybody from the state of Oregon. My name is Lee Hensel. I am Senior Communications and Marketing Manager here at the partnership, and been exciting to be able to work with this team to deliver these materials for you all. And I will pass it over to Ari.
Thanks, Lee. My name is Ari Lewis, and I am on the policy team at TRP, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone, and I'll hand it over to Dan.
Thanks. Hey again, everybody. Dan Leaf, he, him, with the Recycling Partnership Policy Implementation Director. I live here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm focused on all things RMA, and supported the development of that program plan, which was so exciting to see accepted on Friday. And also working behind the scenes on the education outreach initiative as well. So happy to be here, and I'll hand it back over to you, Sam.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everybody. Hello again. My name is Samantha Longshore, and I'm a community program manager for the Recycling Partnership. I and the team that you were just introduced to are here on behalf of CAA to assist with education and outreach efforts during this coordination phase. All right, so you've heard who we are, and now we'd love to get to know each of you a little bit more and learn who is with us today. So it is that time again, time to jump into the chat. So in the chat function, please let us know who you are, what community or organization you're representing, and your role. So your name, who are you here on behalf of, and your role. And I'm going to take a peek into the chat as we have these introductions. Got Durham, Portland, Metro, DEQ folks in the house. We go Pride Disposal. Excellent. Amy, City of Beaverton, City of Eugene. Fantastic, everybody. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and keep that going. Again, feel free to drop your name, the community or the organization that you're representing, and your role as we say hi, as we jump in here. All right, so now we're going to jump into an update on the engagement process and a reminder, if you want more detail on how we got here, make sure to watch the recordings of our previous education and outreach webinars if you missed them. Ari will drop a link to find the recordings in the chat one more time for folks who may not have been able to join right on the hour. And here we have a high-level overview of the phases for education and outreach implementation, which are outlined in CAA's Oregon program plan. And this helps to illustrate and reinforce the message from DEQ that the first program plan will be a time for continued consultations between CAA and interest holders. And really exciting to see us getting even closer to that July 1st date. And this effort isn't really a light switch on off change, but composed of rolling phases, working to help build upon each other by providing new information, but then also tweaking, reinforcing, and being able to give different audiences what they personally need to meet them where they're at. The Batch 1A Educational Materials Review is a perfect example of how this is happening in real time, with the ability to release materials, gather feedback, and then make adjustments to improve them. And we'll talk more about the findings from that review in just a bit. As a reminder, various channels, including digital and non-digital avenues, are being utilized to deliver the education campaign and materials so that we can reach everyone through methods that are available to them, such as materials they can have in hand through mailers, over the air, in print, and several other forms. We want this to be as inclusive as possible. And today we'll continue focusing on the localized instructional materials you see on the left-hand side of this diagram. In the table here, you'll find our schedule for upcoming educational material reviews. The Batch 1A beta reviews with local governments and service providers are complete, which was a fun little whirlwind. So thank you to everyone who attended those webinars and provided feedback that was extremely helpful. Today, we're digging into Batch 1B, and registration for Batch 2 webinars will be included in upcoming marketing emails, which you receive from me. Batch 3 is in the contractor selection phase, and C+C has been selected as the agency to assist CAA with Batch 4. More information about those batches will be announced at a later date. If anyone is not yet on our education and outreach mailing list and isn't receiving those emails from me about these opportunities, we please ask that you fill out the contact form for this group. Ari is going to drop a link to that form in the chat. If you've already completed this form, you do not need to do so again. And as a reminder, this form is for those distributing education at the local level. So if we have producers or other organizations with us today that don't serve those roles, please note that this form won't be relevant for you. In coordination with the material reviews shown on the previous slide, this flowchart helps to illustrate an approach to educational material design modeled for continuous improvement. You can think about this as two primary phases. The first begins with Batch 1B and Batch 2 drafts provided in English. While the Batch 1A betas did include some Spanish assets, these upcoming batches will be in English only first for review. We'll host the review webinars twice per batch material set, so folks have a couple opportunities to attend live or watch the recording before completing the feedback survey. Feedback will also be gathered through the ORSAC E&O committee and additional CBO consultations. With this feedback, the materials will be revised and then transcreated. In the second phase, the materials will be released in all languages per the program plan schedule, and CAA will lead ongoing feedback during the first program plan that allows for monitoring use and gathering feedback, adapting and updating based on that feedback to fit needs in an ongoing capacity. As a reminder, here are the 4 batches of educational materials from the program plan that will be moving through that continuous improvement model. And today we'll be reviewing the Batch 1B Messaging Timeline Guide and Community Education Playbook. The playbook is referred to in the program plan as the Style Guide. However, before we get to those materials, we'll be providing an update on the Batch 1A Beta Educational Materials feedback received and changes made. Please also note that a QR code is listed as a Batch 1B material, but this is simply a graphic that will be provided for future use in education and outreach materials. So at the moment, there isn't anything for review for that item. And before we review Batch 1A educational materials feedback, Ari is going to start a quick poll for us. We would love to know how many folks with us today attended our Batch 1A webinars, which were held on January 13th or January 21st, or happened to watch the recording of that January 13th webinar. If you weren't able to attend those, and this is your first educational materials review webinar, we'd just like to see where folks are coming from and how much of this background information you're familiar with. So feel free to jump into that poll. We have responses coming in now. Right, 32 of 43. We'll give another minute here. Again, just let us know If this is your first one, you're just joining us for these material reviews. We do have a number of folks first time here. All right. Looks like we can go ahead and probably close that poll now. Excellent. All right. So it looks like most folks joining us today did also attend those Batch 1A educational webinars, but a few folks, this is your first one joining for those educational material reviews. So thank you for letting us know. That's really helpful to kind of know that we still have some new folks coming into the fray for that as well. So we really appreciate that. All right, so we're going to spend just a little bit of time reviewing the Batch 1A beta feedback received and the revisions made so far. Included for your reference here is the remaining timeline for Batch 1A. As you can see, we are at transcreation time where Batch 1A materials will be transcreated in all non-English languages identified in the program plan. These will be released on April 4th, and that begins another iteration process for ongoing feedback and continual improvement of these materials. The Batch 1A betas, after revisions from feedback, were released in a CAA email announcement on February 3rd. It included a link to access and download assets finalized for release in English and Spanish, and a summary of feedback received with an explanation of adaptation applied. We please ask that you archive or delete the files used during your feedback of the Batch 1A betas, and the next iterations, again, will be available on April 1st, but please don't share those publicly yet. Additionally, just a heads up that the recycleon.com website was intentionally made to look temporary and low profile to discourage the general public from wanting to engage with it before all of the pieces were up and running. 9 key themes were identified in the Batch 1A beta survey feedback, and we received over 150 total overarching comments from DEQ, as well as 31 respondents, which were a mix of local governments, service providers, and a CBO. And we'll dig into each of these themes a little bit. We saw several key themes falling under simple, clean, and accessible. The first being a desire to simplify materials by reducing text and using more common language. Text throughout Batch 1A materials, particularly the recycling guide and newsletter copy, was shortened and the language simplified to be more inclusive and focus on key needs. We removed confusing statements, such as the need to check locally, and provided placeholders for more local information and timing. We removed colloquialisms, abbreviations, and symbols to help make language clearer and transcreation more direct, and also used more positive and confidence-building language. Another key theme was reducing clutter of layouts and images. Some individual images were removed from material-specific clusters to ensure only 5 to 7 items are included in each, with the exception of 8 items in plastic and 8 items in the Metro-specific metal image, both of which have just a much wider category of materials. However, in addition to removing some images from all clusters, materials within the categories have been given more ample spacing to reduce overlap for clearer views of materials. Layouts were organized to place paper and cardboard category names have also been simplified to kind of allow for that visual continuity between those similar categories. Please also note that the cat litter bucket was removed per a DEQ request, but we did confirm and receive clarification that bucket lids are accepted if snapped on, so the lid will be returning in the next version of that image. And to round out this section, another theme was improving readability and accessibility. There isn't a great visual of the newsletter that does this justice, so how about a stat? The first newsletter draft in English was 358 words, and after your review and feedback reminding us to keep it simple, clean, and accessible, we took another deep dive and reduced the text by almost 40%, saying more with less in a few ways. And we kept this in mind and made edits through all materials. We simplified the text for a broader audience reach and improved consistency through documents such as through the use of capitalization and removal of ampersands. Font sizes are used to create visual hierarchy, while text on the images can help people connect the item with the category it represents. To align on accessibility, we updated to ensure at least a 12-point font throughout all materials, rewrote the newsletter from a 9th grade reading level to a 7th grade reading level, with the intention of keeping all future materials at no higher than an 8th grade reading level. And we reviewed all current alt text in the files. We got rid of redundancy and shortened the overall content, simplified the language and sentence structure, and added in placeholders for communities to customize to their local information and timing. Additionally, we saw a request for materials to be purposeful and timeless. An opportunity to recycle compliance statement was added to the recycling guide to ensure materials help local governments and service providers meet this need. And with the request that materials be timeless and not require alterations to be used in the future, we removed references to dates in the copy to allow for longer use and introduction to the public at unique timeframes based on local adoption of USCL. We also saw many specific and detailed recommendations around transcreation and materials. For transcreation, at least one certified translator or native speaker reviews all materials. Language was simplified to allow for clear transcreation. We reviewed recommendations with C+C's linguists for alterations and included alignments with language already in use in Oregon communities. An iterative approach to educational material design will be implemented in which CAA will lead ongoing feedback during the first program plan that allows for monitoring use and gathering feedback, adapting and updating materials in an ongoing capacity. As part of this effort, CAA will also work with local governments to establish a glossary of translated and transcreated terms. Text and images were also revised throughout to address material-specific feedback. Examples of changes include using clearer language and removing hard-to-recognize material images, adding material preparation statements, clarifying dimension requirements, and revising terms and descriptions to avoid confusion in accepted materials and contaminants. While most of the comments were around simplifying materials, making them timeless, to avoid becoming outdated, we did see requests for more information on the cart label and requests for additional materials outside the current scope. For cart labels, CAA encourages communities to clearly label all carts as a best practice to reduce confusion. Material images have not been added to the cart labels to allow them to remain timeless through future accepted material changes. However, container decals of varying sizes that include images of materials will come in the next batch of materials, batch 2, and will include consultation periods. So you will see those in March. In terms of additional materials, the recycling guide will be editable for USCL items only. Special posters with single materials are not covered under the RMA. However, a Recycle on Oregon Community Education Playbook is being provided with today's Batch 1B educational materials, and this will provide style guidelines to assist communities with creating those additional outreach for unique audiences and materials, but with a consistent look and feel. CAA will also explore offering a more business-focused guide or creating more editable guide sections when the full guide is released. And everyone can visit recycleon.com to download the updated files and to see a comprehensive list of all of this feedback. In addition to the items covered on the transcreation slide, we did want to note another major change, which includes moving from informal to formal Spanish for several items. Some materials, including advertising, social media, and the newsletter, will continue to use the informal Spanish, but the more instructional materials like the press release, recycling guide, and signage will use formal Spanish. And now we'll move into the Batch 1B educational materials and the feedback survey available now. With this webinar, the official feedback survey for Batch 1B educational materials is now live and will also be distributed via email with this webinar's recording. Ari will be dropping a link to the survey in the chat, so feel free to bookmark this so you can complete the survey by Friday, March 7th, so 2 Fridays from now. In addition to the feedback around Batch 1A educational materials, we also heard feedback about the survey format itself, which was really appreciated. Some folks felt that the ranking was not ideal and that they felt they had to score items lower as a 2 or below to be able to provide additional written feedback. And we certainly didn't want that to be the case. We do use a 1 to 5 ranking to help us get a quick gut check on how these materials are performing. If there's something that doesn't meet the need, we want to know right away. So we apologize if the language about leaving a comment if you score something 2 or lower was confusing. We really wanted to make sure if anyone felt that a material wasn't meeting the need, that they made sure to provide feedback. But we didn't mean for it to discourage a higher score with additional comments to make it even better. So in the survey for these Batch 1B materials, you'll see that we've revised the survey language and given more opportunities to leave comments about different aspects of the documents, as well as overall feedback. And just so everyone is aware, the survey description is where you will find a link to the downloadable folder containing the assets for review. And I'll walk you through where to find that in just a moment, but we just wanted to let you know, again, while showing these assets during the presentation today, that you will be able to download them after the presentation to be able to spend some more time with them as you prepare your feedback. We just don't want you to feel rushed, so you can review them at your leisure. So I'm going to stop my share very quickly and bring up those surveys to walk through for just a moment. So here you will see the Batch 1B educational materials feedback survey. Again, very similar in Microsoft Forms. So folks that have seen the USCL survey and 1A, this will have a very similar layout for you. What I do want to pull particular attention to is that here is where it says, please download this Lightbox folder, which includes the draft materials for review. So you can click this folder, and once you are in, you'll see the 2 materials here for download. So you can download them both or download them individually, but here is where you will be able to find them. So again, they are housed right within that survey for you. Okay. All right, so please note again that the folder with those documents will close after the survey deadline, which is Friday, March 7th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific. So please submit your feedback by that date and allow time to begin reviewing. And we are going to encourage anyone that doesn't attend this webinar or the repeat webinar on Friday to watch a recording, which we'll also send out via email. And just a reminder that the webinar being held on Friday is a repeat of this content. So if you're here today, you don't need to be in attendance on Friday. We're just giving folks a second opportunity to attend the webinars live. So please submit your feedback on these materials by Friday, March 7th. And one more quick note, we do ask that if several local governments are working together on written feedback, that they only provide one response with all of the names. And if you have any unique feedback, please feel free to take the survey, but relay that your additional comments will be incorporated with the local government you designate to respond with gathered feedback where applicable. This really helps us to streamline the feedback process and allows more time for incorporating the feedback. And we'll be reviewing 2 materials today. The Recycle on Oregon Messaging Timeline Guide, which includes a recommended phased messaging timeline for local governments and service providers to adhere to for their recycling education program, and the Recycle on Oregon Community Education Playbook, which will help ensure the public experiences a unified aesthetic and feel whenever and wherever they receive recycling information in the state. Both of these documents are meant as internal-only tools for local governments, service providers, and CBOs to help with your recycling education programs. They are not meant to be public-facing. First up is the Messaging Timeline Guide. This scenario-based content plan outlines how and when to use campaign materials for effective communication during various events and milestone in your community's recycling program. Contents include available educational materials, a template communications plan, a timeline for statewide introduction to the Recycle on Oregon campaign, and scenarios for your community's unique experiences. The scenarios covered include switching to the USCL with an existing curbside collection program in place, switching to the USCL and adding new curbside collection, introducing new or changing existing collection sites, and introducing a USCL material change. And you'll find in the survey, if there are any major scenarios you expect that aren't included here, we would love to hear from you on those. The second material is the Recycle on Oregon Community Education Playbook. This is a comprehensive guide designed to help local governments, CBOs, and service providers across Oregon to implement and align their local recycling programs with the Recycle On brand. It provides a combination of branding guidelines, educational tools, and actionable steps to promote consistent recycling practices statewide and help to create supplementary materials with a consistent look and feel. The playbook also aims to equip interest holders with tools to reduce contamination and increase recycling participation in Oregon. So we have broad guidance and specific guidance on varying levels based on what you're trying to accomplish locally. In addition to these goals, the Community Education Playbook provides an overview of the RMA program plan as it relates to the education and outreach plan and the Recycle on Oregon brand. It covers ways to participate in the Recycle on campaign, including a helpful checklist, how to create campaign materials from the templates, and brand guidelines like fonts, colors, logos, and imagery. The playbook will also cover best practices for clear communication, visuals, and messaging around recycling and contaminants. So this is really meant to give you a leg up in your recycling communication plan. So I hope everyone is excited to download those guides for review and to start taking a look at the feedback survey that is due on March 7th. Please note, because these are informal guides, they are a little more text heavy than the other materials we've reviewed so far. So please give yourself a little extra time to review them before taking that feedback survey. And now we will talk next steps. As mentioned earlier, if you attended today's webinar, you don't need to attend the webinar scheduled for this Friday. That will be a repeat webinar to give more folks an opportunity to join live. The feedback survey for the educational materials shown today is live, so we look forward to hearing from you no later than Friday, March 7th. And Ari will drop a link to the feedback survey for you again in chat so you can bookmark it. And just a reminder, if local governments are working together on written feedback, please incorporate them into one response that everyone can refer to, and then leave any additional individual feedback in the survey. Please keep an eye out for upcoming emails from me, which will include a recording of today's webinar, a link to the feedback survey again to make sure folks have it, and registration links for future webinars to review upcoming batches of educational materials. We will be reviewing batch 2 in March, so we hope to see everyone there as well. And one final plug to anyone not yet on our education and outreach mailing list. If you haven't been receiving update emails from me about this information, please fill out our contact form that Ari will drop in the chat one more time for folks. And as a reminder, this is for those that are distributing education at the local level. So if we have producers or other organizations with us today that don't serve those roles, please note this form won't be relevant for you. And if you filled this out before, you do not have to fill it out again. Included here is the review process for the Batch 1B and Batch 2 educational materials. We are currently in the webinar and survey phase for Batch 1B. You'll find the iterative process after your initial review to continue providing feedback for incorporation in an ongoing capacity. And Batch 2 webinars will take place next month. Batches 3 and 4 move into the statewide motivational assets, which are currently in the scoping and planning phase. So details for these assets will be confirmed as soon as possible. And we are going to use the last of our time together for some additional Q&A if anyone still has questions. But before we jump into that, we just wanted to thank all of you again for spending your time with us today, your time with us really since last year in this process, and for engaging with this, because really it is helping to make this very successful. So again, another big thank you for the Batch 1A feedback provided. That was so helpful. A reminder for anyone that may need to hop, this webinar will be posted online on CAA's website, and we'll send a thank you email with that location and the link to the feedback survey. So please keep an eye out for that email. That will come from me. So thank you again. Please stick around if you have some additional questions to drop in the Q&A. And if not, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your feedback survey responses. Thank you.
Great job, Sam. Lots of good information there. We do have one question in the Q&A about how the formal versus informal Spanish decision was made. So just a little background, we did receive a fair bit of feedback on the Spanish translations and the Spanish usages from community members here in Oregon, or educators here in Oregon. And so we worked with C+C as well as some of those Spanish-speaking educators. CAA has a bilingual communications specialist on staff as well. And so we had a pretty good meeting with folks to talk about the differences between the formal and informal. Overall, we want the brand Recycle On and the information that's being provided to be well received. And a lot of that is going to come in the informal, such as the ads and some of those less educationally focused parts and pieces. But switching to the formal on the education side of things so that it's received in a more respectful way. And so working with the linguists from C+C and their team, as well as from local governments and the CAA team, that decision was made. We'll see how that works out. And if you have other feedback, I'm happy to hear that as well.
And again, just a kind of a big thanks on that. So, that conversation was had a couple of times and was brought up again as part, of that batch 1A feedback review. So just another good example of continuing to sort of hear that feedback, continue those conversations, and then sometimes make a pivot to make sure that we are, kind of meeting the folks based on the differences in those materials. So thank you again for participating in that survey.
Not seeing any other questions in the Q&A. So Sam, I just want to echo what you said is the big thank you for everybody that provided feedback on those first batches. There was a lot of feedback, but I definitely think it strengthened the materials, and we were able to produce a really good product that was a collaboration of the communities and their needs, as well as where we were coming from. So that was great, and I look forward to this next round of feedback as well. All right, it might look like everybody's waiting to see what everything looks like before they ask any questions. So might be able to give folks some time back in their day.
Thanks everyone for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thanks everybody. Have a good rest of your day.